I tried every 3D printed pair of shoes to find out which one's the best. Printed shoes are the newest wave in footwear and are the most futuristic pairs of shoes that you can buy. And that's not just because a 3D printed pair of shoes is designed on a computer and then literally printed out, but it's also because unlike regular shoe manufacturing, you can actually create shapes that shouldn't exist. Like this. What even is this? As a huge fan of 3D printing and as an industrial designer who literally 3D printed prototypes for years in my actual job, 3D printed shoes are like the coolest thing to me because you can make basically anything. So for today's video, I bought as many 3D printed shoes as I possibly could, ones that were either available for retail or weren't too crazy hard to get, and I tested them all out to find out which one is the best. I even took them to SneakerCon to get other people's opinions. If you don't know what SneakerCon is, it's a whole convention for people who like sneakers, so you'd think that they would know something about sneakers and what sneakers are good and which ones are bad. You would think, at least. So I'm gonna go through all of these shoes and create a tier list and rank them all from best to worst. And for those of you who have no idea what 3D printing is, essentially it's an additive manufacturing process. Unlike regular sneaker manufacturing, where people are sewing things together or gluing things, 3D printing takes a 3D file and literally prints it out. Now, of course, there are many different types of 3D printing, the main ones in footwear at least being FDM and resin, and they all have their pros and their cons. And what's great is that throughout this video, you'll see basically all of the different 3D printing methods in footwear. So to dive a little bit deeper into the 3D printing process itself, no matter what kind of 3D printing you're doing, it's usually done in layers. In the case of FDM printing, essentially you've got this material, it's called a filament, that runs through this hot end which melts the plastic. Generally this material is plastic, and it layers it on top of each other over and over and over again until you have a full thing. It's a very similar process to resin printing, except rather than heating up a plastic, melting it, layering it on top of each other, and then letting it cool down, resin printing usually requires some sort of light or UV to harden the actual resin. That's done in layers. You're basically taking a photo every couple seconds, and then like FDM printing, each layer kind of builds on top of itself until you've got a 3D thing. Now to give you an example of an FDM print versus a resin print, this right here, the new Nike Air Max 1000 is an FDM print. It was printed with a thermoplastic polyurethane, or a TPU, which is actually recyclable, and it was printed by heating up plastic and then layering that plastic on top of each other until you get the full shape. The Adidas Climacool, on the other hand, was a resin 3D printed shoe. It looks a little bit different, it feels a little bit different, it smells a little bit different, and it was printed out of resin, again by using UV light at the bottom of the basin to harden that resin and then slowly build layers on top of each other until you get the shoe. But the first shoe that we're gonna rank in today's video is actually one that I 3D printed myself, and that's why it's the worst, because it sucks. This is my at-home printed Yeezy Slide. I printed this using one of my Creality printers, using Ninja Flex as the material, and it came out okay. It took about, I think it was like 30 something hours to print one shoe. Unfortunately, it's too small for my feet. It like doesn't actually go all the way onto my feet. And also, even with more infill than I usually print in my 3D printed shoe models, it still kind of collapses when you stand on it. In fact, it's got like a airbag in there that you can hear kind of squeezing out whenever you squeeze it. Now with that being said, it does kind of look like a Yeezy Slide. The color is right. The glisten's a little bit off. Like a Yeezy Slide's more like a foam material. And I genuinely think if you wanted to 3D print your own Yeezy Slides, you could do it, because there are files online to do that. Now the problem is it worth it? Probably not. Yeezy Slides are like 70 bucks, 80 bucks, depending on the colorway that you get. This was kind of expensive because I use Ninja Flex, which is a more expensive filament. It's a softer filament versus like a standard PLA filament, which is like a hard plastic. And it took multiple days. I forget the exact number. There's a whole video on my channel. Check it out if you want to. It was more a proof of concept than anything else. It's not comfortable. It's not that good looking. Not so much the design of the Yeezy Slide itself, but actually the 3D print quality. You can see all these different like strands kind of coming off of it. The inside of the shoe is a little bit iffy because there was some support material in there I had to pull out. It's fine, but it's not great. Now, as much as I don't want to do this because I made this myself, I do have to put this in the F tier because it sucks. It doesn't feel good on foot, it doesn't look good on foot, and it's just generally bad. I mean, yeah, I'm proud of myself for printing it. It's kind of cool that I printed it at home, but hey, that's the only thing that's good about this shoe. Next up is the Adidas 4D Forward. Now this shoe is actually one of the latest versions of the Adidas 4D sneaker. This shoe first released back in like 2017 and it looked pretty different than it does now. But what's interesting about this shoe is that it actually combines a 3D printed midsole with a more standard engineered mesh and textile upper. So in a lot of ways, it's trying to give you the best of both worlds. A very interesting, springy, and relatively soft midsole with a soft and breathable upper. Now the problem is I don't feel like it's right to really rank this shoe on the list because it's not a fully 3D printed shoe, and to be fair, there are some other shoes on the list which have elements that are not fully 3D printed, but because it was one of the very first 3D printed shoes to actually hit the market, we gotta put it on the list somewhere, and genuinely, I wanna rank the shoe at an A because overall the experience is great. This 3D 3D printed midsole is of course resin printed. It's printed by a company called Carbon, which teamed up with Adidas to create their 3D printed midsoles. It looks really cool. It's this sort of lattice shaped structure that compresses when you wear it. And the reason it's called the 4D forward is because the shoe is designed to actually propel you forward. Is it as good as a regular foam? No, I think there's other foam shoes out there that are much softer than this, and there are also shoes that propel you forward more than this does because they usually have like a carbon plate in between the midsole and the upper. But for one of the first 3D printed shoes to hit the market, it's pretty decent. And it hasn't changed that much since the original version almost 10 years ago. I will say the original version did look a lot better, in my opinion. The original Adidas 4D was sick. It was called the 4D Futurecraft. It came with a black primed knit upper and this really cool sort of like futuristic light green, or I guess mint green printed midsole. It was incredible. And this one just kind of seems like a slightly newer version of that. Pricing wise, it retails for $200. I got this one on sale for $149. I'll make sure to leave links for all of these shoes through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen if you want to grab any of these. And I really want to rank this shoe high because it's a great overall shoe, but because it's not fully 3D printed, I gotta give it a B. Comfort wise, it's pretty great. The midsole is soft underfoot, not super soft, but soft enough. The upper is really comfortable, but it's not 3D printed, so does that even really count? I really gotta give this shoe a B. In terms of every other 3D printed shoe that I have on the ground, this is probably the only one that I'd recommend actually running in though. So if you're looking for a 3D printed running shoe, 4D forward, specifically the 4D forward 4, I think is what this is a good way to go. Next up is the Asics Actibreeze 3D printed slide. Now, unfortunately, this slide is no longer available, so another shoe that probably shouldn't be on this list. However, this shoe is wildly comfortable. Like the Adidas 4Ds that we just talked about, this shoe is printed with the same sort of lattice kind of look. Now, it's not the exact same pattern, but it's similar, and it's also resin printed. However, for whatever reason, this shoe is significantly softer than that shoe, and it doesn't smell like resin, which is kind of crazy. I don't know why that is. It just smells like, doesn't really smell like anything. Now, this shoe was groundbreaking when it first released because it was the first fully 3D printed pair of slides released by a major brand. I'm sure there was other fully 3D printed slides released by smaller brands, but this was the first one that was dropped by a big brand like Asics. Now, one common thread that you'll notice with all of the 3D printed shoes on this list, they're all, in a way, collaborations between the big sneaker brand and some sort of 3D printing manufacturing company. Now, I think the name of the company that 3D printed this shoe was Lux Creo, or maybe Lux Creo is a brand that the actual company created. I'm not totally sure, but either way, it is a separate 3D printing company than the one that works with Adidas, and that's Carbon. And I think Carbon and Adidas have some sort of like big agreement where they can't work with other companies. Probably same thing with Asics and Lux Creo, but it's a very interesting pair of shoes. It feels amazing on foot. The problem is, because it takes so long to 3D print this shoe, it came out in incredibly limited quantities and actually resells right now. A pair of slides actually resells on places like StockX for $300. That's how much I spent on my pair. It's crazy. I do it for you guys. I do it for the videos. I gotta spend that money on ridiculous looking shoes so that you guys get to see ridiculous looking shoes for free. Now, I personally love this shoe. First of all, it looks insane. It looks so cool. Second of all, it's incredibly soft. Like, it's a super soft, super flexible pair of shoes that feel great underfoot. Not only that, it's also super breathable because of the way that the pattern is made. Like, you can see basically all the way through the shoe, so airflow is just all over the place, and it comes up underneath your foot too. It's crazy. Now, one comment I get a lot on videos whenever I talk about this shoe is, if you stand on dog poop, it's getting through to your foot, and that's true. That will probably happen. So I guess you could say that is a design flaw. The other problem with this shoe is that because it was so limited, they only printed it in a few sizes: a small, a medium, and a large, and an extra large, and each one of those sizes was ridiculous. Like, this is actually, I think, a large, so it's supposed to fit like a size 8 to a size 11. I'm a size 9, so this shoe looks insane on my foot. It's way too big. Check this out, look at that. Way too big, but it is supposed to fit everywhere between like a size 8 and a size 11, or I think maybe it's a size 9 and a size 11. Regardless, the size range is insane, and it really kind of tends towards the larger sizes. So if you're kind of out of luck like me and we're stuck at the bottom of the size range, that sucks. Other way around though, if you're at the top of the size range, then you're good to go. So sizing's bad. Poop will get stuck in the shoe. It'll get kind of sucked up into the bottom. It may not hit your foot, but it will probably get stuck inside the shoe, and it's gonna be very difficult to get it out. I have some rocks in there that I can't get out, but it's cool. It's futuristic, it's cool, and it's literally cool. Very breathable. Now, as much as I love this shoe for the comfort and for the aesthetics and the breathability, I've got to give it a C. Now, the reason I got to put the shoe in the C tier is because the price, which is insane. I think it retailed for maybe $80, but the chance of getting one for $80 was basically zero. The sizing, terrible, awful sizing. And third, you're definitely gonna vacuum up some stuff off the street. You can't wear these to the beach either because the sand gets stuck in there. I've tried it, not great. After that, we've got the second version of the Asics Actibreeze 3D. Now, this shoe, kind of like the Adidas that we talked about earlier, is sort of a hybrid between between a fully 3D printed shoe and a not so much fully 3D printed shoe. And that's because while you do still get the same 3D printed material and lattice structure and feel from the Asics 3D Actibreezes that we just talked about, this shoe actually only features a 3D printed insole. The rest of the slide, or I guess the sandal, is just a standard molded piece of foam. It's nothing super special. Actually, it's really just sort of the outer shell of the shoe. Most of the shoe is this thick 3D printed midsole. Now, in terms of being a slide, this is actually a huge improvement over the Actibreeze. Now, it doesn't look as cool in my opinion, but it definitely takes the best parts of the 3D printed part of the shoe, or the best aspects of the 3D printed shoe, and the best aspects of a regular slide, and puts them together. So while yes, there are still cutouts at the bottom of the shoe, they are significantly smaller, and there's much less chance of actually getting things sucked up into the shoe. Not only that, you can wear it to the beach now because the sand doesn't get stuck up in there, and if something does get stuck in the shoe, you can just pull out the insole and you're good to go. Sort of shake it out. Like the original Actibreeze, this is still pretty breathable because there's so much room for airflow in it, which is great. You can get some airflow through the sides of the shoe because there are these like little ventilation holes on the side that suck up air when you step, which actually makes this super, super breathable. I mean, it is a slide, so it's gonna be breathable anyway, but those little ventilation holes kind of suck the air in when you compress them and distribute it throughout the bottom of your foot. Feels great. Not only that, this Luxe Creo 3D printed material, I don't know exactly what it is, but this resin kind of material is still very, very soft. Not as soft as this, but still very soft. And the reason for that is mainly because it's contained in this sort of foam shell, so it can't expand as much as it would if it was just a fully 3D printed shoe. And finally, because it's a much simpler shape and there's less 3D printed material, it takes less time to print, meaning that they can make a lot more of these and they're a lot cheaper. So this shoe retails for 80 bucks and you can find it for 80 bucks. Now, is it as cool as the original? No, it's also not as breathable or as soft, but if you're looking for a good everyday slide, this is cool. I will say though, and this kind of is true for both of these, when you wear these, it kind of feels like you're standing on a shower grate a little bit. The holes in this 3D printed midsole, I think you feel it more in this one because it's a bit stiffer. You don't feel it as much in this one, but they kind of mimic a shower grate, and it's not like an incredibly soft foam where when you step into it, it kind of compresses underneath your foot. Parts of it compress, but other parts don't, so you're kind of left with this almost grid pattern on the bottom of your feet. Not a big deal, but something to keep in mind. You kind of just have to try it to really experience it. Now, in the same way that I had to put the Adidas 4D Forward down a grade because it's not fully 3D printed, I got to do the same thing with this. I love this shoe. I think it's great. There are things that I like about the other shoe better, but unfortunately, because it's not a fully 3D printed shoe, I got to give it a C tier. I think overall it's a better product, but because it's not fully 3D printed, got to bump it down from a B to a C. Next up is one of the craziest pairs of shoes that I've ever seen, and that is the Way of Wade Moon Rocks. Yes, this is actually a 3D printed pair of shoes. It's painted, but it is fully 3D printed. Now, based on the lattice structure inside the shoe that you can also kind of see in the bottom of the shoe, it looks like it's 3D printed by the same company that makes the Asics. Now, I'm not totally sure about that. I actually don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if, because Li Ning is a Chinese company, Way of Wade is owned by Li Ning, that this shoe is manufactured in China through a similar process, but I don't totally know. They don't say who 3D printed this shoe. Now, this shoe absolutely lives up to its name. It's called the Moon Rocks, and it looks like a moon rock. I mean, it looks like a rock, and it also kind of feels like a rock. It's not soft whatsoever. Oddly enough, Dwayne Wade decided to sign off on this shoe, and so it got made. Should it have? Probably not. So the entire shoe, or at least the entire inside of the shoe, seems to be printed with the same lattice structure that you had on the Asics like I mentioned. However, there is this printed shell that goes over the entire top of the shoe and the sides and a little bit of the bottom that make it much, much stiffer. Like, this is a really, really stiff shoe. Even if they had made the shoe out of foam, like a lot of thick foam, it still would have been softer. It's a very, very hard shoe. And when you put it on, oof, it's not great. It's not comfortable. Now, it's not incredibly hard to put on because they give you a big ankle opening, but once you get your foot in there, it's like, I mean, yeah, it feels like a rock. Not soft, not squishy. They tried to make it breathable because they added this sort of ventilation hole in the back and some on the bottom, but it doesn't do anything, at least not enough of anything. I don't notice it at all. And I don't know why the heel is a part getting ventilated. I don't know why they didn't put ventilation holes somewhere else on the shoe because it gets hot. Also, there's like this really weird flat side on the medial side of the shoe that they spray painted black that has some text on it and definitely Dwayne Wade's signature, but weirdly enough, you like literally can't read the text. I mean, they took the spray paint and just like held it there. You can't actually read the text because it's printed small and then the paint kind of fills up the hole. So very difficult to read. Plus, I actually think it's backwards. I think they wrote it on one shoe and then just mirrored the shoe in the 3D program. Like, that's 100% what happened. So this shoe is the right way around. I can't read what it says, but I can see that like E's are the correct way around. Also, it's such a weird detail. Like, why do you add these on the shoe? You can't see it, you can't read it. When you're wearing the shoe, when someone takes a step, like you see it for a split second and it just looks like a black part of the shoe. So it seems so weird to me that they did that. All right, well, speaking of the rest of the shoe, the Way of Wade logos are in different places on each shoe. On the right shoe, it's on the toe. On the left shoe, it's kind of off to the side. And then the upper of this shoe is probably black, like the inside, but it's painted in this gray color to make it look like a rock, and they added a couple different spray paint lines to give it some, I guess, some color variation. Like, there's a gray spray paint line here, one kind of going along the side here. It's interesting. I've got to say, like, I bought it because I was interested in it, but is it something I would ever wear? No, like, no. There's no situation in which I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna throw the moon rocks on today. Okay, there might be some weird out of the box situations like I'm meeting Dwayne Wade or, I wanna wear something insane, but oh, they do have ventilation holes in the front. Well, they do nothing. I gotta put this shoe in the D tier. It just barely makes it out of the F tier because it's more wearable than the Yeezy Slides that I have. And it's kind of weird. I like the weirdness of it. And it's only 60 bucks. So there you go. It's not incredibly expensive either. So if you want the weirdest pair of 3D printed shoes out there, this is one of them. Next up, we've got the Adidas Climacool and the Adidas Climacool Laced. So this is essentially the same shoe. This one released in 2024, the fully 3D printed one. And then this new version called the Laced, because it has laces, released in 2025. Only difference is that this one has a tongue that's actually made up of fabric and then actual laces. But generally, they're very, very similar shoes. In fact, other than the addition of like the Adidas logo on the bottom of the laced version and the tongue, obviously, and the laces, they're exactly the same. Now, visually, I actually think I prefer the way that the original looked because it's very futuristic and actually pretty cool looking. I love this sort of lattice texture that they've got going on. I say that a lot. It does look like a chip, like, one of those lattice cut chips, or fries. It looks like a Chick-fil-A shoe in that sense, but it is very, very cool looking. It's also pretty flexible. It feels reasonable on foot. However, I will say that the biggest problem with this version, which you probably could have guessed, is that it's not easy to get on your feet. This new version is easy. The laces make it easier to tighten down the shoe. The tongue gives you a much bigger opening. This one wasn't hard to get on. This one, kind of a struggle. In fact, let me throw it on right now. All right, it is on. It's on. My socks are about as bunched up as they can be because it takes a minute, but hey, it was on. Let me do a really quick comparison test. I actually haven't tried these on side by side, which sounds stupid, but let's see. Yeah, very easy. It's on already. I just threw it on right now, no problems. So like the Adidas 40 Forward 4s that we talked about earlier, this shoe is also resin printed, probably also by carbon. Very similar process, essentially, there's a build plate in resin, a light flashes for a layer of the shoe. I don't know which side was the top and which side's the bottom. I'm assuming this is the bottom. That looks like where it started. So because it was the tip of the sneaker, you probably had like a little tiny flash and then much bigger flashes, and slowly the shoe kind of pulled itself out of the resin like that. Now the problem with resin shoes, and this is kind of the problem with all the resin shoes that we talked about, the Adidas ones in particular though, you can really smell it. Resin shoes are always hardening. Well, specifically shoes that use UV to harden the resin. Whenever you wear the shoe outside, it gets a little bit harder. Although this shoe has gone through a curing process, it does slowly harden over time the more that you wear it outside, which is weird. It also smells like resin, which is not great. And I have heard that resin 3D printing is kind of a toxic thing. I've done it myself a little bit, and it's something that it smells bad. You don't want to breathe it in. You want to wear a mask when you're doing it. You want to wear gloves because it's also not great to actually touch your skin to. And it's very messy. Like there's been a couple times where I've spilled it and then the light from like outside just hit the window just right, hardened the resin on the floor. I'm not even kidding. I haven't told my wife that yet. She hasn't found the resin area yet, but if she's watching this video, sorry about that. Now I have heard also that if resin gets in contact with sweat, it has sort of this interesting reaction which you can actually have allergic reactions to. So all around, it's not like the safest material in the world. Now, as far as the actual finished shoe, like once it's printed, once it's cured, it should be safe. Like there's no issues there. But for the people actually doing the resin printing, I'm sure masks are absolutely required. It's something you just don't want to get in contact with. It's not the best manufacturing technique. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well then why do people resin print? Like what's the reason for it? Well, the main reason is because it creates very, very thin layer lines. The word that's used a lot in the 3D printing community is resolution. So imagine like old school Mario. You could see all the different pixels. Like they're big blocky pixels versus modern video games where the resolution is so good you can't even really see the pixels. It's similar with 3D printing, except rather than having pixels, you have layer lines. With resin printing, because it's literally a liquid that's hardened with light, the layers are incredibly thin, meaning that the resolution is very, very high. So you can create something like this, which you probably couldn't create with FDM printing because it's not like a melted plastic that has a certain thickness. It's literally like this almost film thin layer of resin that is also pretty soft. And like looking at it super up close, you can't really see any layer lines. Obviously you can see like the design of the shoe, but compared to my 3D printed shoe, like you see all these lines here, that's the different layers that built up the shoe. So again, the benefit of printing in resin is mainly the resolution. It can be super high. You can create things like these sorts of patterns that you can't really create in FDM printed projects. So that's why resin printed things tend to be a bit more intricate, at least in this case, and tend to look very, very smooth. I have a friend who does tabletop gaming and he prints everything in resin because it looks like an actual like molded toy after you're done with it. Now what's cool about this resin, besides the way that it looks, it's also soft and flexible. It feels good on foot. This is a very comfortable shoe, and it's also very breathable because there's holes all the way throughout it. I also love the aesthetic of this shoe. I think the design of the Climacools is dope. Like I really, really like the way this shoe looks. And again, you couldn't do this with FDM printing, at least not to this level of detail. detail. Now sure, these shoes do kind of look like socks, but that's more of a design thing than anything else. I think they look sick. They look very futuristic. The tongue definitely adds to the shoe, and I'm gonna rank these both together because they are very similar shoes. I'm gonna give these a I'm gonna give them an A because they're awesome. These are sick. Next is ASAP Rocky's Puma Mastro 3D. Puma was just watching everyone create 3D printed shoes, and they were like, listen, let's create something that looks like none of them. So this is the Puma Mastro, or Puma Mostro. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. I always thought it was Monstro because it looks like a monster, but no, it's a Puma Mastro, inspired by other Puma models called the Mastro that are not 3D printed. And this is a collaboration with ASAP Rocky and looks like literally an alien foot. As you might have been able to guess by the fact that this shoe is incredibly detailed, this shoe was resin 3D printed, very similar to the Adidas Climacools that we just talked about. Now the difference here is that this shoe was spray painted with this green spray paint to kind of give it its own unique flair, which I do really like. And you can also see the layer lines a bit more in this shoe than you can with the Adidas pair. You can really see them on the outsole in these little pods. Actually, you can also kind of see it there too, like right in the light. See right there? So this shoe is a classic example of they couldn't do this if they didn't 3D print this. The Puma Mastro is one of the wildest looking pairs of shoes I've ever seen. It's got spikes all over it. It's got ventilation holes on the side. It's got these like pods on the bottom. It's super, super weird. And I think for a lot of people, this shoe is really cool and very futuristic. And while yes, I agree that this shoe is absolutely futuristic, I don't know if it's something that I personally could ever wear. The vibe is not for me, I'll be honest with you, but I am impressed by how it looks. And I will say that around the heel area, they've got this very soft 3D printed padding, which somehow feels amazing. Like I don't know how it feels so good, but it feels great. Now in terms of comfort for the rest of the shoe, there's not a lot of padding throughout the rest of the shoe. And right here, where this sort of giant pod kind of comes off the bottom of the shoe, there's a big drop off. And the ball of my foot, even though this is my exact size, kind of sits like here. So when I stand in the shoe, it feels like part of my foot is kind of hanging off this cliff, and it really presses into my bone, and I don't like the way that it feels. This is a wild pair of shoes. It is flexible. It feels more rubbery than anything else, and it looks crazy. I think if it wasn't spray painted, it wouldn't look as crazy, but I do think the spray paint adds a lot, which is nice. I think that was a nice touch. Again, it kind of follows that sort of foot hugging shape of the Adidas Climacools, but realistically, it's not something I would rock. That being said, it is pretty hyped up and impossible to get because I think it's completely sold out. I paid like $400 for this pair, just for this video, for you guys. Again, you can grab it through the affiliate links on your screen. But yeah, it's a wild looking pair of shoes. It's different. It can only be done in 3D printing. It's a fashion piece. It's an accessory. It's not something you wear for comfort. So because of that, I'm gonna give this shoe a solid B. I think it could have been a C if we really took full comfort into account, but I gotta give it a B because it is probably the wildest looking pair of shoes on this entire list. Finally, we've got offerings from Nike and from Apthcry from the same manufacturer, Zellerfeld. So this is the brand new Nike Air Max 1000. It just released through Zellerfeld and through the sneakers app, and it's a fully FDM printed pair of shoes with the Nair unit kind of popped in after it's finished being printed. This is actually my pair of shoes that I'm releasing on August 29th with the brand that I co-founded, Apthcry. It's also 3D printed by Zellerfeld, and I'll talk about why that's a good thing in a minute. But both of these shoes are printed with the same material, using the same techniques, and feel really, really good on feet. Now, basically every other pair of shoes that we talked about in today's video, other than like the first pair that I did, were printed using resin. And the reason again for that is high resolution, but there are a lot of trade-offs. However, this German company called Zellerfeld, which 3D prints shoes, and it's 3D printed shoes for people like Justin Bieber, for Post Malone, Yeezy, Nike, and some other big brands like that, and also Apthcry. You know, shout out to Apthcry, big brand over there. Small brand, but still a good brand. Zellerfeld's mission is a little bit different than all the other companies. I actually don't know what their missions are, but Zellerfeld makes it very clear. Their goal is to put a 3D printed shoe on every foot. And the way that they're doing that is by printing things differently. And the first way that they're doing that is by FDM printing. So rather than using resin and hardening it with UV light, they're using a plastic that's actually recyclable and heating it up and printing it out in layers. Now, while the resolution is not as high as resin printed shoes, it's still pretty friggin' good. I mean, you can see the layers there a little bit, but it's pretty difficult to see. Now, some benefits of Zellerfeld's proprietary FDM printing. Now, FDM printing is not proprietary in and of itself, but Zellerfeld created their own printers. They use their own proprietary TPU, and they have their own proprietary methods, which they don't tell people. I don't even know what some of those methods are, but they're apparently there. Printing this TPU is apparently non-toxic. I mean, you are still heating up plastic, so you probably don't want to like go in and sniff it over long extended periods of time, but hey, it's less toxic than resin printing. It's also much easier to clean up because it's basically just a heated up plastic, and when you're not using it, it's just plastic. It's recyclable, so once you're done wearing these Zellerfeld shoes, you can send them back to Zellerfeld. They'll grind them back up, make pellets, and then print those pellets again into a new pair of shoes. And they're able to create tons of different textures and softness levels on these shoes. Like, it's crazy. So for example, on the upcoming Apthcry Mule, which comes in 5 different colors, it releases on August 29th on apthcry.com and on Zellerfeld.com right at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Pretty limited, so make sure to get there right at 11 to actually secure your pair. It's $150, so priced pretty well as well. I realize I'm really dropping a whole promo on you guys, but we are dropping the shoe and it's gonna be fire. But if you look at the shoe up close, you can see that there are areas that are smooth and then areas that have a checkerboard pattern. So this checkerboard pattern is actually a different kind of printing layering or a different kind of infill, which makes it feel like a foam. And it's actually the softest material of any of the 3D printed shoes that we talked about, even though it's all the same TPU. Now, what's even wilder is that when you move down on the shoe, the midsole of the sneaker is thick and it's stiff. Now, inside the shoe, because it uses that same sort of checkerboard pattern or a similar pattern, you get a very, very soft underfoot feel. In fact, I actually did a comfort test at SneakerCon to see which shoes that people thought were the most comfortable, and the Apthcry Mules consistently won. Now, as much as I want to take credit for the comfort of this shoe, yes, we did design the way the shoe looked, but the comfort is kind of the case for all Zellerfeld shoes. So that's the reason we decided to work with Zellerfeld initially, because we felt like Zellerfeld makes the best 3D printed shoes.
You might be watching this saying, wow, this dude really made a list and made his shoe the best shoe on the list.
Well, yes, that's the case. Yes, absolutely. But the reason that happened is because when we came up with the idea to create a 3D printed shoe to release with my sock brand Apthcry, we decided to work with Zellerfeld because we felt like they made the best 3D printed shoes. I've tried all these 3D printed shoes before. Yes, I bought all these new ones for this video, but I've over the years tried every single different kind of 3D printed shoe that's been available. And since the first time that I tried the first Heron Preston Zellerfeld shoes like 3 or 4 years ago when they started manufacturing shoes, Zellerfeld has consistently been the most comfortable. Not only that, what you're able to create with Zellerfeld shoes is wild. Like, this pair of mules would not be possible in any other manufacturing technique. Sure, you could try and mold it, but it wouldn't feel the way that it feels. Like, it really feels crazy soft underfoot. Now, the other example I have of a Zellerfeld shoe, of course, is the Nike Air Max 1000. This is essentially a collaborative effort between Zellerfeld and Nike. In the same way that Adidas uses carbon to 3D print their shoes, Nike used Zellerfeld to 3D print their Air Maxes. This shoe is like 98% 3D printed except for the air bubble, which they pop in after printing it. And it's truly one of the most futuristic pairs of Nike sneakers ever. It's also one of the most limited pairs of Nike sneakers, but that's a different thing. In addition to this shoe being wildly comfortable like the Mule, I do think personally that this shoe is a bit more comfortable because of the actual shape of the silhouette. It's a mule, so you can slide your foot into it, lounge in it, wear it to the store, whatever you want to wear it for. Whereas the Nike shoe, you do kind of have to like open up and put your foot into, and you don't have as much breathability in this shoe. That being said, still an incredibly comfortable shoe. Still got that checkerboard area, which feels like foam. Like, you genuinely have to actually try this. I can't really describe it. It feels, well, I can describe it. It feels like a foam tongue. If you feel a foam tongue in like any Nike sneaker, where's one with a foam tongue? Let me see if I can find one. Here's a pair of Asics with like a regular foam tongue. It feels like that. Like, it's crazy that this plastic can feel like foam. It's nuts. And again, the inside of the shoe got that same sort of checkerboard pattern, also feels incredibly soft underfoot. Funnily enough, this shoe is a Nike Air Max, so it's gotta have an air bubble. The air bubble is actually stiffer than the actual TPU material. So the stiffest part of the shoe is under the heel, which is generally the softest part of most shoes. And that's because there's an air unit there versus the front of the shoe, which is just like a standard TPU. So weirdly enough, the part that's not 3D printed is the hardest part of the entire shoe. But I think in the case of Nike creating an Air Max, you had to have an actual air bubble there or else it wouldn't really have the DNA of an Air Max. So I like that a lot. It's also inspired by the original Air Max 1, at least the shape of this shoe. So design-wise and comfort-wise, I think this shoe is a huge win. The Air Max 1000, when it first released last year in the red colorway, was my favorite release of the year. This year, they're releasing it in blue and black and in oat in this color right here, and I still love it. And actually, one other big benefit of Zellerfeld shoes compared to resin is that, well, one, they don't harden when you're out in UV light, but also it's incredibly durable. So this pair right here is one of the sample pairs for the shoe that we're releasing on August 29th, and I've been wearing it since March of this year, every single day, and look at the traction pattern. I mean, compared to the new one, the one that I haven't worn yet. Like, it's crazy. You'd think that plastic would fall apart, but it doesn't. Like, this shoe has stayed together. It's amazing, and it still feels the same. And you'd think after wearing it for like 8 months that it would pack out a little bit. I don't think it packed out. I think it actually softened a little bit. It feels even better underfoot now than it did when it was brand new, which is crazy. Here's the very first sample pair that we made. It's actually the same color material as this, but I left it outside for probably about, when did I get the shoe? Like November, December of last year? So like 9-10 months. This shoe has been outside literally, and I've worn it outdoors for like any sort of outdoor activities, in the dirt, in the mud, whatever. It sat in the sun. It's darkened a little bit, but not much. And it still looks great. Same thing with my first pair of Nike Air Max 1000s, the red pair that I got last year. I wore that pair a bunch, still looks great. This FDM plastic is incredibly, incredibly durable, way more than I ever would have expected. And it also feels amazing on foot. Again, I know it sounds like I'm totally glazing my own shoe, and I get that, but genuinely I'm talking about all Zellerfeld shoes. And I felt this way before we worked with Zellerfeld. Like, I've been wearing Zellerfeld shoes for the last 3 years and always consistently impressed. And it's not just some random dude on the internet saying that. Nike's working with Zellerfeld, Justin Bieber's dropping some of his new Skylarks with Zellerfeld. There's a lot of people working with Zellerfeld, and the reason is they're just good shoes. And another thing is that while yes, these do take a while to 3D print, it's not like a super quick process, it is faster than resin 3D printing. But before I reveal the final tier rating, let's first find out what people at SneakerCon think of all of these shoes and which one's the most comfortable.
Yeah, it's alright.
It's alright.
It looks like I should be on the moon, but I'm not.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I like that compression, man.
I feel like it's gonna, like the sole's gonna cave.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And I don't weigh that much.
Those are the A6 Actibreeze.
Yeah, these comfortable. I like these.
What'd you say out of 5?
4.6.
Wow, okay.
Nah, these are them.
Let's go.
This is them. Yeah, these are 5.
Let's go.
I like how they look with my outfit.
More than your off-whites? Wow.
Do you not? Do you not think so?
They're not bad. How do you feel about them on feet?
I'm bottoming them out and I can feel the ground, but like it feels like I'm stepping on like soft Legos. I mean, these are zero comfort, but they're cool looking.
Yeah, they
I mean,
do look
like
good on
rocks.
feet.
This is the softest out of all 3, hands down. Like not even comparable.
So when it comes to Zellerfeld 3D printed shoes, in their current iteration, I don't think they're perfect, but I think they're really, really good. And because I gave some of these other shoes an A, I've got to put these in the S tier category because I genuinely think they're that good. Now I will say, in 5 or 10 years, Zellerfeld shoes, because it's literally like a future technology, are going to be way better than they are now. But for right now, I've got to give them S tier compared to everything else in the market. Now, if you want to grab your own pair of S tier Apthcry Zeller, this totally sounds like an ad. Like, this is not an ad. I genuinely was just interested in ranking 3D printed shoes. But if you want to grab my actual Apthcry Mule that is manufactured by Zellerfeld, it drops on August 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern time on apthcry.com, also on Zellerfeld's website at the same time. It retails for $150, and we're doing an in-store launch on August 30th at Takeout NY in New York City, where you can try the shoe on. Even if you don't want to buy it, you can try it on. You can win some giveaways. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening on August 30th. There are 5 different colorways of this shoe. There's the black one, the oat one, the orange one, the red one, and the blue one. Unfortunately, I only have the black and the oat. That's how limited it is. I don't even have the other colors. So if you guys want to grab a pair of these, make sure to be on the website on August 29th, right at 11 a.m. Eastern time, because they will sell out. But hey, with all that being said, let me know in the comment section down below which one of these shoes is your favorite, even if it didn't get an S tier ranking, or maybe it's one of the F tiers. Maybe it's the friggin' Moon Rocks or whatever it's called. Even if it's one of these guys, let me know what your favorite pair of 3D printed shoes are. Have you tried 3D printed shoes? As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.